you're going to be designing the school of your dreams. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that I would recommend you guys, so since you have students from Australia, from India, from the United States, and whatever other countries there, it may be a good idea to start with describing your. So you might want just telling, how your schools look like, and basically maybe even showing some pictures of your schools, and talking about the classes. I bet as you start comparing your schools, you will probably think about what's good about each of those 7 schools or whatever number of kids you have on your team, and that will definitely help you start with some good ideas as you will be developing the school of your dreams. So very nice. Edison, Shia, can you guys hear us? Oh yeah, go ahead. Nevaeh, you wanted to add something?
Oh, also that we so our group we picked so the girl in Australia, we all picked a day and a day and a time that we could communicate, and it's 4:00 that she's going to school and we're always out of school, and then on the weekend it's still 3 or 4 o'clock.
Oh, right. So 4 p.m. for her, that's early, I guess for her that's after school.
8 or 9.
Yeah. So I think it's they're 16 hours away ahead of us. So it's it would be
or she was going to
7
school.
a.m., right? Because if it's 4 p.m.
Yeah.
here, it's 7 a.m. next day for them. Okay. Huh, very nice. Very nice.
And
Very
it was
nice
Monday.
to hear that, Nevaeh. Very good. Very nice. All right. Shia, Edison, you also had some stories to tell. How's it going for your team?
Yeah. So our group, me and Addison are on the same team. So.
Oh, you are okay. So tell me about your team.
So we've been kind of communicating through Skype and WhatsApp and Viber. So.
What countries do you have on your team?
Huh?
What countries do you have represented on your team?
We have 2 kids from Africa, 1 kid that just got on, who's from Ghana, and then another kid from South Africa.
Very nice, very nice. And then what other countries?
Wait, let me think. We have this kid from Ukraine.
We
have very briefly chatted with before, but she hasn't really ever said anything. But and then all the other kids are from the U.S.
So you have a couple from the U.S. You have some from Europe, from Ukraine, some from Africa. Very nice. And so, have you been able to communicate with your team members already?
Yes, we've communicated last weekend, and then after the webinar, we're gonna have a meeting.
Very nice, very nice. Okay, have you decided on the company yet?
Yeah, we're kind of just establishing that today. So.
Okay, well, you have time. No rush, no rush.
Okay.
And Edison, did you want to add anything? And I see Emily is here, showing up again as Frederick. So say hi to your dad. So any chance Emily is on your team? She's in South Africa, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's on your team?
Yes.
Oh, so we have almost the whole team here then. Very nice.
Almost.
Okay, good. Great. All right, well, good to hear that, guys. Emily, for some reason we don't hear you, and I think what you need to do is you need to go to the lower left corner of your screen. There is an icon there that looks like a microphone. And if you choose a different microphone, hi, Mr. Frederick. So if you choose the microphone there, a different one, so it should work, because sometimes it just chooses their own microphone by default. So we have 3 people from your team here, so it's almost like a team meeting. Hello, hi. So, yeah. All right, other kids, any other comments? So, Daniel, you're saying I can't hear at all. So, Shaya, you can hear me, right? Can you? Yeah, okay. So, because some kids said that they couldn't hear me or whoever else. Okay, so hopefully that's outdated information. All right, so let's see if, yes, our presenter is already here. So thank you so much for sharing information about your schools. So Shaya, I'm going to move you back to the regular presenters. And hi, Olga. So let me just move the kids back to the room. Emily, so let me move you back and then maybe we'll talk afterwards, all right?
Okay.
Oh, and now we can hear you. Tell me just in 2 words, how is it going for your team? And then we'll, oh, you cannot hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay,
I can hear you now.
Okay, so
Okay.
yeah, so how
Well,
things are going for your team?
it's going quite good, actually.
So you had a meeting, like Skype meeting or WhatsApp meeting, or how are you communicating?
Not yet. We did have I forgot. Um, we've almost chosen a project, but we haven't got answers from 3 team members yet.
Well, you have
Okay.
time. You have time.
Oh, I wanted to say I found out about how you could like spread the news about X culture.
Let's
more.
talk about that. So let's talk. That's a very, very good point, and I really want to hear you. But let's talk about that after the guest speaker talks. All right? So because we want to spend more time on that. All right. So let me just get back to them. So Olga, can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Okay. Oh, perfect. I was about to start giving you the instructions. Perfect. Okay. Well, so then, since we have the guest speaker here, so we have here Professor Olga Kolbasyuk. So she's from Russia, and she will talk about culture. We know that X culture is all about culture, and so today we will learn a little bit more about the basics. What is culture, what culture maybe is not, and then why it matters in a project like that. And so we want to hear about Professor Kolbasyuk's research here. So please, I'll switch to you, and then, so let's go. And you have some slides, you said, right? You will be using slides?
Well, actually, if you allow me, Vas, I a little bit changed the focus because, I've been listening to the previous presentation about culture, and I thought that, talking about culture is a little bit like, something that other people were always also talking. So
Right.
what I really like to do is just to share my personal stories with my personal dilemmas.
Even better, yeah.
It would certainly trigger, the cross-cultural issues and I would like to communicate, to interact with participants, with you, with young people, kids who are, present and participate at the webinar. So that's my suggestion, if that's okay.
That's perfectly fine. Stories are always better than boring lectures. So yes, absolutely.
And as I said, although I am teaching at the university, I don't like lectures. I like interaction, discussions, reflections. I think that's, the best way of learning from each other. It's, something that I really enjoy to talk and to learn from each other. Because if this is a one-way direction, then it's going to be boring for
No, I totally agree. So yes, of course. Yes, then please go ahead. So, and kids and students, so if you're watching, feel free to ask your questions. You can put them in the Q&A window. And then if you would like to talk to the presenter, you can raise your hand and we will add you to the conference room here. And so we will engage in the discussion. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, so please go ahead, Professor.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak and to share my stories with you. Actually, this is a delight. And I really would like to start with something I am deeply, with my appreciation for the invitation. This is number one. And the number two is that I've been involved in the X culture for a number of years. Actually, when I came from the far east of Russia, now I live in Kaliningrad, which is on the very, very west of Russia. It's an enclave territory. I'm sorry I don't have a map with me, but you can actually imagine the territory of Europe, and this enclave, this very small territory, is close to Poland and Belarus and Lithuania. And we actually do not even border with the main continental Russia. Since I moved here, I applied to participate in X culture, and since that time, for 7 years, yes, right? Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So I got So I got the map here. So that's somewhere here, right? Right in the
Riga,
that's the part, right? Isn't it?
Somewhere here. Mm-hmm.
Is that the one?
Yeah. Yes, that's the one.
Yeah.
That's the one. This is a small part. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Vas. It's very helpful. And you see that the mainland Russia is, at a far distance.
Right.
And I think that participating in this culture is a very, exclusive opportunity for you guys to be able to learn things in the experiential way. And this is, I suppose that this is one of the best ways to learn. Otherwise, the learning, I mean, it's okay to learn from books, from each other, from experts. And this is something, you know, the slides that I included, but they are not necessarily even to be presented. You know, we learn from each other, from books. It's okay. And it's, you know, very good. But then you start doing it. You start interacting with people. You start visiting. You start doing real things like you're doing the X culture on that global platform. And then you face the challenges you have to overcome. You have to cope with dilemmas that people are, you know, presenting and delivering all the time. And this is something that I call living a life knowledge. And this is something that becomes the knowledge you value and you're not going to forget. You are facilitating and you are actually enriching yourself, your personality, your professional background with this kind of experience. And that's something that I would like to tell about X culture. I really, really value myself as a professor and my students also. Each time they participate in this program, they would come with very positive feedback about how much they got from this participation, how much enriched they are and they were. So I
really appreciate your kind words. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so to make a story, a talk, not a short, not so long, like for 15 minutes or so, I would like to share some of the stories that I personally have in my background, because I'm a person from when I was born, I lived in the Soviet Union, and this country was behind the Iron Curtain for so many years. So we did not have any possibilities to travel or to study abroad. And I would usually start any meeting with people from, you know, different countries, from different cultures, with this story that when I was a student, and I got a very rare opportunity to go and visit and even study in Great Britain, Oxford University. Even at that time, in the times of the Soviet Union, there was a program, an exchange program, and it was a very rare chance for me to get there. So when we landed, and there were 20 students from the entire Soviet Union, okay, and when we landed at Heathrow Airport, and the professor from Oxford was meeting us there, we were kind of introducing ourselves. And then people would say, my group mates were introducing themselves, saying, I'm from Moscow, from Leningrad at that time, now it's St. Petersburg. And I was from far away place. And I was not sure whether people would know where Irkutsk is. And Irkutsk is located on the Lake Baikal, which is in the Western Siberia. So my response when I got the turn to introduce, I said, I am from Siberia. There was silence. It was just silence. And the professor would just go around me. And to me, it seemed like, you know, an hour had passed. And I was like, oh, what's going on? Did I say something wrong? What's happening? I was kind of, you know, scared. And then the professor would just, you know, go around me and say, Olga, but you look quite normal. And then we would continue that, you know, you're not hairy, you're not, you know, covered with icicles, things like this. And so this kind of stereotypes that we all have in our mind are still there. And I would like, you know, to ask you if you know what a stereotype is, and if you ever experience that kind of or similar stories when people would perceive you very stereotypically, like you are from certain culture, and then there would be certain response as if you are the kind of typical, whatever typical is, representative from this or that culture. I don't think that, people changed a lot. Of course, there are now lots of possibilities even for people from Russia to visit each other, to travel. But then still we are, we tend to have these stereotypes in our heads. And sometimes they help and sometimes they hinder, they prevent us from being, from opening new things and perceiving each other from a different perspective. Anyone wants to share his or her story about it?
I'll actually share a story that is developing now at the Academy of Management's Facebook page. One of the professors, I'll show you in a second, one of the professors yesterday asked if we have examples of stereotypes about other countries. So literally he said, I'm looking for example pictures, cases in which representatives of different countries are essentially presented stereotypically. And so I gave him some examples here, like for example, there is a stereotypical view about the United States. For some reason, people outside the United States think that Americans do not know about the rest of the world. Think that America sees the world in this way. So, and what I do, for example, in my class to break the stereotypes. So when I teach a class, I usually would have, let's say, 50, 60 students, and about 30% of them would be from different countries. And when we start playing the game, tell me a stereotypical story, everybody or somebody would always say, oh, Americans don't know about the rest of the world. And then I would call to the classroom, to the front of the class, an American student, and I would ask him, for example, tell me, do you know what countries, for example, I don't know, Spain borders with or China borders with? And the student would say, yeah, I have no idea. I don't know, China. Yeah, I don't know, maybe common border with Japan or maybe common border with something. I don't know. And everybody says, yeah, I told you Americans don't know about the rest of the world. And then I would call a few students, let's say, for example, one from Russia, one from Ukraine, one from Germany. I would call them to the front of the classroom and I would ask them, can you show on the map where, for example, Nebraska is, or South Dakota, or where, I don't know, New Jersey is. All those states, they are basically the size of a country. They have the economy that is bigger than many countries. And they have no idea. They can still find Florida, so they kind of know it's somewhere there in the South. Maybe they can find California, but so it turns out that, people just know about their own parts of the world and they have stereotypes about others, just because they don't know about my part of the world.
Right.
There is another one, again, another stereotype. If I can go back, let me see if I can find it. This one is actually, again, quite popular on the web and I'm not sure how visible it is. So that's how different countries solve problems. So presumably Germans always have a solution. China, if there is a problem, they just hide it, and so on and so on and so on. So we have here quite a few countries. Again, probably way too stereotypical. So the Irish presumably just drink until the problem disappears, and so on. So, but anyway, obviously it's not too much stereotypes in this story. And there's one more I'll show you in a second. I think this one's actually pretty good. Some German student did. Let me see if I can access it. Some German student made these drawings years ago, and then apparently different people have been adding to this ever since. So let me see if it's going to work. Yeah, so here we have pictures that kind of show the differences between the East and the West. For example, presumably in the West, when people get old, they're alone. Kids don't live with them, so they're alone, so they get a dog. In the East, people spend time with their grandparents. And then the meals, in the West, we have cold breakfast, hot lunch, and cold dinner in the East, apparently. So I'm not sure how true it is, but So in the West, we like to watch. In the East, they just come with cameras. Stereotype about the Japanese tourists who always come with the cameras. And so if you're not happy in the West, you show that. If you're not happy in the East, you kind of hide that. And so way to go to the solution. Again, very, very stereotypical. I mean, in the United States, for example, we have people from all around the world. And, once you get to know them, you understand that many of those stereotypes are unsubstantiated. So I'm not sure if students, do you have any stories? Anyone has experienced being stereotyped or, seems like there are not many stories. But would you have some questions? Is now a good time to talk about the questions, or would you like to carry on with your stories and then go to the questions?
Well, actually, if there are questions, you're welcome, but I can actually, continue and then.
Let's go on and then we'll leave some time for the questions.
Of course, we can go on and on with these stereotypes, which are hundreds and probably tons from different perspectives. But we are here to learn more about each other, and actually people are trying to do that, since the East and the West, and there is we are trying to make a dialogue. But this very experience, which was in my in my students' years, in my students' time, was an eye-opening experience to me. And since that time, I decided what I'm going to do in life. And since that time, I arranged lots of exchange programs with first school children and then the university students. And there's a couple of stories that I would like to share with you when I started these exchanges. For example, and one of the first exchange was in the Great Britain with students of mine, which were like, who were probably 10, 12 years old. And I remember that once they would come to a host family without any invitation, like, that students in the group, they knew each other and they knew where they lived, the host families. So one of the students decided to visit another student, and he or she came to, visit the host family without any invitation. And he or she was very surprised that, for example, the family was very embarrassed, and they did not have any food, any dish that they could offer to that to the student who was visiting them. That was a very nice learning, a very nice lesson, so to say, for the student to learn that in some countries, say in Russia, for example, if you visit a Russian family, well, I cannot guarantee that it's 100%, but people would visit each other very often without any invitations. And usually there is always food for people who could come without any, invitation. But in other cultures, it's not, it's not a good sign. It's not a good habit. And it's not even in their ethics to do things like this. Another example is that it concerns myself. I have been staying in the host family for almost a month, and say in a couple of days I was supposed to leave. And I thought, since the host family knew, both my host dad and host mom knew when I was supposed to leave, I assumed that they would probably, help me to get to the airport, to give me a lift or something. Again, my assumption, like the way that would work in Russia, for example, okay? But, there was silence. No one, offered me anything, any lift to the airport. And I was ready to really get offended. But then I called my very good, it's not a friend, but probably an acquaintance. And he said, Olga, you should ask directly, okay? You should ask, ask if they could actually give you a lift to the airport. And in my understanding, it was not something I was to do. But I decided to follow the advice, and I got to the host dad and host mom and said, you know what, I'm leaving tomorrow, or like in a couple of days. Do you think someone can actually give me a lift to the airport? And they were very happy to do that. They would call and, they would arrange everything. But to me, also, it was a very nice learning that, and then I was trying to understand why. And the why, probably someone knows, and probably someone can interpret this situation so that, it wouldn't be, again, a one-way talk. Because in my understanding, it was something about the personal space, and that people would not like to kind of embarrass and to intrude the privacy and to embarrass the guest in case he or she had made some arrangements beforehand. And then if I, for example, had made the arrangements beforehand, their offer would actually embarrass me, would have embarrassed me, and I would have to say sorry, apologies and things like this. So that was also a very nice example of this, privacy, and, that people would not like to intrude the privacy. In the Soviet Union, in Russia, privacy is still a very, a very special, so to say, phenomenon. and there's even not an exact way to translate it, okay? Because it's more like a, you know, so to say, collectivistic culture, relationship-oriented culture, and you know, it's okay to share things, to do things, you know, to say something like invitation or offering directly, not even thinking of the possibility to offend with the offer. Okay?
Right. Yep. Happens all the time. True. Very true. Kids, do you have any stories about cultural differences? I'm not sure if you have already experienced any in X culture, but
Right.
have you ever traveled to a different country or met somebody from a different country where you could tell that there is a difference in cultural values or in practices or some other type of difference? Anyone? I've lived in many countries, and so my sort of stereotypes and you know, biases, in a sense, in most cases were not substantiated. For example, I was going to the United States for the first time in 1999, I believe, and at that time I knew about the United States primarily from movies, and so I thought it's a country, you know, just like, you know, whatever movies in the 80s we were watching, like Rambo, or, you know, like, so I thought that the country is, you know, sort of greedy, and everybody is very aggressive. And so I lived in Wisconsin. My first trip was to Wisconsin, and I was extremely taken aback how nice the people were and how relaxed they were. Like, for example, you know, it was a small town. They wouldn't lock the doors. They would, you know, like, if you need a car, you just, you know, sure, yeah, here's my car, you can take it. So there were some things like I was like, whoa, that's very different from what I expected from, you know, from Americans.
Yeah.
So obviously you wouldn't have your, you know, keep your doors unlocked if you live, like, I don't know, in a larger city. But at least for me, this rural, you know, like, smaller town in Wisconsin, that was quite a change. And so I see somebody's raising hands. Edison, you wanted to have, yeah. So yeah, Edison says that she hasn't been to any other country but here. Frederick or Emily are asking if country is something more than what we believe in. So if culture is more than our sort of, you know, mental modeling. So is culture more than that, Professor? So how would you define culture? Like, what does culture encompass, and what is not culture?
Well, in my understanding, culture is, you know, everything. The way you do things, the way you behave, the way you think, the way you communicate, the way you say, it's all about culture. And my favorite metaphor is about cultural environment. Sometimes it is even very difficult to say what culture is for you. Like, for example, if you say, you know, you represent the Russian culture. Are you a typical representative of the culture? Typical is something that is very hardly that is very difficult to actually understand, because there is, in my understanding, there is no typical representative, because, you know, people differ not only on the national values, but also on gender, profession, ethnicity, all kinds of things, age, you know, occupation. It's all about culture. And when you say, well, tell me more about your culture, sometimes it's difficult. And I have a metaphor about it. You know, in the aquarium, there's fish, swimming fish, and a mature fish is swimming and closing and nearing the two young fish. The mature fish is greeting the young fish, saying, "Hi, how is the water?" And the young fish are puzzled, because the water for them is so habitual. It's their environment. It's something that they even did not, you know, do not think about how to describe the water. And what would the reply be? Like, the water is something they are used to live in. They are used to swim. It's their habitual environment. And it's hard to define it. Like, you know, this is the culture that I live. That's why I think that it's a it's great when you meet someone different. And when you meet someone different, whether you visit him or her, whether you travel, whether you study with someone, or whether you do a common project with people from different cultures, you kind of meet someone who is very different from you. And then you learn more about yourself. That's how, this is my attitude, and you understand that your attitude might be very different from someone else values. And yeah, the picture here is very good, because actually when we talk about culture, it's an endless talk. It's about symbols and heroes, rituals.
I happen to have published a few papers on culture, including on the topic of is culture more different within countries than between countries? But anyway, without getting into too much math, if I can offer a couple of slides here. One, culture is multi-layer. So, you can see culture by artifacts. You go to a new country and you see different architecture, you see different food, you see different clothing. So those are the attributes of culture that are kind of on the surface, and you see them right away. And the further deeper you look, the more you get more into the values and beliefs.
Right.
So, as I believe I said last time, so culture can be compared to an iceberg. So some things about culture are visible right away, and some things you have to really, really look closely and deeply in order to see. So again, some of the attributes of the culture are, right on the surface.
Right.
And I believe I said that my favorite example or metaphor for culture is a vegetable. So, yes, some things are visible, and once you look at those visible things, you can tell right away what culture the person is from. Like if you see a person from Saudi Arabia, for example, I guess by the way they dress, by the way they talk, you can say right away, oh, he must be from Saudi Arabia or one of those countries.
Yeah.
But in order to truly understand the Saudi Arabian culture, you have to really spend some time. You kind of have to dig up that vegetable and try and taste it. Because otherwise you may recognize it right away, but you may not fully understand it.
Right, exactly.
We have a few kids here, so kids, we still want to leave some time for our administrative stuff, but it sounds like you wanted to share some stories. So Shea, Emily, Edison, go ahead.
So,
go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So I used to live up in the Northeast in America.
Right.
And
what state were you at?
I moved back.
Where exactly you were? What, Washington, Oregon?
New York.
So that's Northeast, right. Yeah. Okay, New York, okay.
When I moved down here to, South Carolina and to North Carolina and Greensboro, I noticed a very big change in how people do things, like the way they dress and the way they the way they treat others. So it was kind of hard to start to fit in and stuff, but eventually I kind of understand.
Well, Shea, I as I said, I first was in Wisconsin for a while, and then I did my master's in Texas for 2 years. Then I went to Canada for 7 years, and then I came to North Carolina. It's been now 10 years. The differences between Wisconsin, Texas, Alberta, and North Carolina. I've been to pretty much all countries in Europe. I'm telling you, some of those countries are much more alike than these states. Even though everybody speaks English here, but these are very, very different worlds.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And as I said, I've been living in the far east of Russia, and then in Siberia, and now in the west, in the eastern part. Different cultures, absolutely. I felt like an alien when I moved to Kaliningrad, an absolute alien. A different way of thinking, behavior, clothes, food, everything, as if it's a very different country. Exactly. Yeah, lots of differences, within the same country. And this is also culture, the local culture, the subculture. Yeah.
Emily, Edison, you also had a story about cultural surprises.
I'll let Edison go first.
Can you say that again? Sorry, I didn't hear you.
I'll let Edison go first.
Oh, that's okay. Edison, did you have a story?
Hello?
Yeah. So you haven't been to other countries yet, Edison, have you? You said? No. Did you notice any cultural differences between you, like American culture, and cultures represented on your team?
Well, like what Shay said was like a little different.
A little different.
I've
Well,
been-
Edison, pay close attention. As I said, in 2 months, by the time you're done with this project, you probably will be able to write a book about cultural differences, the ones that you have on your team. How about you, Emily? What differences did you notice as you traveled or interacted with people from other cultures?
Well, I actually had a story.
Mhm.
Wonderful.
That I'm not sure if it's what you are meaning, but I'm gonna go anyway.
Yep, tell us the
Go
story.
ahead.
When I was younger, when I was like 7 or 8, I was in the school where we used to learn it to speak Italian.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And then this one day, this girl came to our school. She could only speak Italian, and we could not understand her. So the Italian professor had to translate everything we said,
Mhm.
and we had to try and teach her English when she tried to teach us Italian.
And do you know where in Italy she was from? Do you know where
Not
the city?
really sure.
Yeah, we had the Ex-Culture Symposium in Italy last summer, so it would have been nice if you came, because you speak Italian, you said, right? A little bit?
I can remember a little bit of it saying it.
Yeah, buongiorno, principessa, or signorita. Yeah. Italian is actually a relatively easy language because it comes from Latin, and so I guess, it's a lot of common. Yeah, very good story. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
for
very
sharing.
good story. Thank you. Very good story. Thank you. In fact, languages, of course, speaking a different language helps a lot. But sometimes people actually do speak a foreign language, say they speak English as an international language, but still they have lots of pitfalls and dilemmas. Say the last probably example from business. I started working as an interpreter when I was younger. And there's a very good example when I first, faced this huge difference of how people, interact and perceive each other. There was an American group of people, business people, and the Japanese people negotiating the deal, okay? And I was translating for the Americans, okay? While Americans were presenting their deal, the conditions, the price, and everything, the Japanese were just sitting like this with their eyes closed, and you could actually tell that they were almost sleeping or something, and they were keeping silence, and they were keeping their eyes closed. And my American partners were very surprised, not to say if not offended, asking, well, it's disrespect. Looks like they kind of disrespect us, and they were almost offended because in their understanding, Japanese were not listening to them. But in fact, this is the way the Japanese were listening and contemplating things. And it was very important for them to keep silence, to think over. But once they hear something that they would, like to discuss, they would kind of, wake up all of a sudden and start talking in groups. And then the American partners, people could actually be surprised because they would never hear anything like, yes, we agree, or no, we don't agree, which is something that the Americans would like to hear. Japanese would not say they do agree or they don't agree. They would put their response in a very different way. Like you would not even know whether they agree with something or don't agree with something. Even when they smile, the smile may actually, convey very different meanings. Like, for example, about smile, I can tell a lot, from the Russian culture, because in my experience, lots of visitors who visit Russia, they were very offended because they would not see many smiles here. And in their perception, they would say, Olga, why are Russians so rude? They never smile. But smile in Russia has a very different function. We smile only at someone we like and we know. So there is a Russian proverb, if you smile or laugh at anything, that means that you are a little, cuckoo. Something is not right with you, okay? So we would smile only at those whom we like or know. But say in the United States, in other countries, you would smile, as a sign of politeness, and you would always smile at people, to be polite. Here in Russia, it's not a sign of politeness. Again, a very misleading things about each other. Japanese keeping silence, keeping their eyes closed when people are offering business deal, and Russians not smiling at you when you visit them.
Yeah.
Okay,
I actually read a study about smiles not so long ago. So they looked at the correlation between the sort of time people spend smiling when talking to others. So they were trying to see what predicts that, and so they found that multicultural societies, so societies where basically former empires that had to move into different parts of the world, so they smile much more. And the theory is, like, for example, Americans, the British, Australians, Canadians, or French for that matter. And so they believe that the reason for that is when people encounter people from other cultures, so when everybody moves into the same territory, sort of, in many cases, they cannot communicate this in the same language, so they wouldn't know each other's language. And so the only way to communicate would be through mimics and nonverbal communication. And so smile becomes kind of one of the ways to establish that contact. And because, for example, in the United States or Canada, for that matter, there were people from all around the world, over the history of this country, often they couldn't speak the same language. And so they had to rely on smile to communicate, and that sort of became part of the communicating tradition. And so that's why here, at the store, at the bank, on the street, people always smile. And yes, to others, it's a little like what's wrong with you? But no, that's
right.
That's how it developed over time. Anyway, we have only 15 minutes left. So thank you so much, Olga, for your presentation. Truly appreciate it. So that was very informative. Let me give a quick update to everyone about where we stand with Xculture, and then kids, if you have any questions about what needs to be done this week, so this would be a good time. So at this time, the early track, if we have anyone in the audience from the early track, they basically are finishing today. So yesterday was the deadline to submit the reports for them. And they have until tomorrow to submit the final, most important survey, post-project survey. So once that is done, they're basically done with the project. It will be a few more weeks for us to evaluate the quality of the projects and select the best teams. But otherwise, they're pretty much done. So it's 1,300 people who are in that track. So can't believe that it's been so, it's been 2 months now. So it's like yesterday we were forming teams and now they're done. They will have to wait until May to receive their certificates and to hear who the winners are. Even though we will evaluate the reports now, we will not be sending the final documentation to everyone until the whole project is over. For the late track, so it's been 2 weeks now, and so we formed about 700 teams. So we have about 3-point-something thousand people on the teams already. And so there are a few more hundred people who will be joining in this, in the next few days. So we have a couple countries that just joined just because the semester started later there. So there will be a few more people placed on teams in these next few days. But overall, we sort of have all the teams formed. And so the first 2 weeks, you had to spend more or less getting to know each other, establishing contact, deciding on the client company. So if you have decided what company you will be working on, what you have to do this week is to tell us what company you're working on. So all you have to do, really, there is an email with a link to the weekly survey. You click on the link, and the only question that we ask you is what company is your team going to work on. We always have the peer evaluations and, is your team doing well? So those questions appear every week. But as far as the deliverables, all you have to do is just to tell us if you've selected the company. Very importantly, if you decide to change your company later on, you can. So let's say today you decided to work on Believe, or you decided to work on Unicorn Me, but tomorrow you decide to switch to a different company, you can. Obviously you can. And so, yeah, that's basically all you have to do this week. Next week, you will be submitting the answers to all of the questions individually. So you each personally will have to look at the complete list of questions. You have about 10 or 12 of them in the challenge. And you have to think about the answers you would give personally, not as a team, but you individually. And so you will have to provide very short summary or very short answers to each of those questions so that we know that you as a person have given each of those questions some thought. After that, you will be answering the same questions, but as a team. So we will go block 1, block 2, block 3, and so on. but we want you really to give some thought to every question on the list, so when you discuss it as a team, you have something to contribute. Very importantly, during this first week or two, it would be nice if you also discussed how your team will operate. So it would be very beneficial for your team if you also talked about, for example, what roles on the team you will have. Will be somebody assigned to do most of the coordination and leadership. Maybe somebody will be the copy editor. Maybe somebody will do more research. So definitely very useful to have that discussion so that you know who does what. Also very important and useful to discuss how you're going to communicate. Again, many teams will use emails only, but some teams will also have Skype conversations, WhatsApp conversations, maybe create some shared folders in Dropbox, or maybe have shared files in Google Docs. Again, those things, they will sort of work out automatically at some, or by themselves at some point, but it is very beneficial to have that discussion and make sure that everyone is on the same page. For example, many teams create Facebook groups, and that's wonderful, that's great. Facebook groups are very functional, very useful, but there is always a small percentage of the students in XCulture who refuse to create a Facebook account. And so as a team, you might want to have that discussion, because you don't want to find yourself in a situation where, let's say, 5 team members decided to create a Facebook group, and then turns out the 6th or 7th team member absolutely refuses to create a Facebook account. So some people don't like Facebook and don't want to have an account. Likewise, if you wanted to use communication tools such as Viber, WhatsApp, whatever else there, WeChat, remember that they're very regional. Like, for example, Viber is very popular in Eastern Europe, but people don't use it anywhere else. Like, it's a very, very like Eastern European, tool. WhatsApp is more kind of Asia, Africa, and North America, but in Europe, it's not very popular. WeChat, it's basically a Chinese thing, so it has 1 billion users, but almost nobody uses it outside China, maybe some other countries in that region. So again, you might want to have that discussion and decide on which tool you use, because no matter what you choose, chances are some of the team members will not have them on their phone. I have all of them just because I have to communicate with the rest of the world, and people have those preferences, but keep that in mind. So try to spend this week or two, establishing those rules and discussing how you're going to work on it. Finally, I will also say that if you have not experienced that yet, you will experience it in the next week. Some team members will not be participating very actively. So there are always some team members who are not as active as the rest of the team. And there will be people whom you will think are not participating enough. So the questions that we will start receiving here at XCulture is, can we, for example, drop this person from the team? Or can I move to a different team because I don't like this team, they're not working hard enough? The answer is that normally, no, we cannot move you to a different team. So it's a rule, like we never move people to a new team. So even if you have a bad team, we will not move you to a different team. But there are several things we can do. One, if there is a team member who is not participating, or who is not polite, or who is disrespectful, as long as you tell us, we will talk to that team member and see what's going on there. If there is a problem, maybe we'll drop that team member from the team altogether, from the project. So maybe he is not, diligent enough, or maybe, as I said, disrespectful or, rude. We don't want people like that on the project. So instead of you going to a better team, we may remove the bad team member from the project altogether. Second, that we have a team of coaches. We have 40 coaches, trained people, a little older, who are prepared and trained to help you in situations like this. So if you send us an email to coaching@xculture.org, 2 coaches will be assigned to your case, usually the same day, maybe next day. And so they will investigate the situation. So they will talk to your team, and they will talk to your team members, and we'll try to find out more. And if there is a problem, they will help you. So at the very least, they can give some good advice, and then they can maybe do more. Maybe they can help you resolve the issue altogether. Maybe they will talk to the person who has problems and explain either that this behavior is not acceptable, or provide directions for what needs to be done. In worst case scenario, they will tell me that I've investigated the situation. I talked to the rest of the team, And so I've determined that it's best that one of the team members be removed from the project altogether. So I will follow their advice. So if you need help, remember that coaching is available. Likewise, peer evaluations. So normally we would not remove anyone from the project unless we have a prolonged record of problems. So if somebody sends me an email and says, Johnny is not a good team member, please drop him from the project. Obviously, I will not do that just because somebody sent me an email. But if I see that Johnny's peer evaluations are very low 1 week, we send a reminder, we send a warning, we maybe even send a coach to investigate and Johnny never responded, or maybe the situation didn't improve despite of all of those efforts. Obviously, if it's 2 weeks in a row, the problem persists, that's when we start thinking about maybe moving that person from the project altogether. So if you have any questions, now is a good time to ask because we're almost out of time. So there is a question from Naman. Do we need to study the culture of countries of the companies we are working on? Yes. Well, yes, but. So yes, you want to study the culture of the company or country that you're working on as much as possible, because in that case, you will be more prepared to help them. So if you don't know anything about the company itself or the country or culture in which they operate, you will not be in a very good position to provide good answers. But at the same time, in most cases, the company will be more interested in the culture of the country where you think they should expand their business. So let's say, for example, you choose Unicorn Clean as your client. It's an American company here in Maryland. And so they probably know enough about American culture. So you probably don't need to tell them much in your report about the culture of the country in which they operate. But let's say you believe that they have a market in, I don't know, South Africa. And so they don't know anything about South Africa. So they want to do business there. If you recommend that there is a market there, they may be interested in going to South Africa. But they don't know anything about that culture. So in your report, you might want to describe the South African business environment and culture in more detail so that they can learn from your recommendations in your report. And when they go there, if they do, they sort of know what to expect. They know how to behave. They know how people interact, all those protocols and differences and traditions. So that's what you should focus on in your report. Edison, when you're saying, what if we are new, can you clarify that question? I don't understand what exactly that means. Now, Friends is asking, my team member out of 7, including me, so out of 7, only you and 4 other people are active and the other ones are not. It's a typical situation. So it's possible that 1 and maybe even more team members will not be very active, especially in the beginning. So we've done a lot of research on that, and we found that initially people are not very active, mainly because they don't know how to initiate contact, how to integrate themselves into the team. So I would not worry at this stage yet. It almost always improves by itself. But if you want to speed up that process, make sure to send regular emails, like I would literally send one every day, to the team members who are not responding. And introduce yourself, say, for example, that, my name is Friends Pulido. I am from here and here, and very glad to be with you on my team. So can you tell us more about yourself? And we would like to have, for example, a Skype meeting. Can you join at this time or at that time? So try to kind of prompt them to communicate, make them feel welcome, and more importantly, tell them what needs to be done. A meeting that they want to attend or that you need them to attend. Maybe some questions that you need to discuss. So send that information their way, chances are they will respond. If they won't, if you send them multiple emails and they never respond, they never show up for the meetings, as I said, you let us know. We will assign a coach first and try to help here. But if that doesn't help, we'll just drop the person from the team altogether. Maybe we'll find some other team members. There are some people on the waiting list. Maybe we'll place them on your team instead. There is a very good question also from Noman. How do we divide the workload in the global virtual team? It's a bigger question that you may realize, Noman. It's a very important question too. Let me tell you what most teams do, and then I will tell you what I think is a better way to do it. The vast majority of the teams that participate in Xculture divide the workload by the report question. So in most cases, they say, let's decide who will be doing what, and then we'll leave those people alone so that they can work on this task throughout the semester. So they would say, for example, Edison will work on the marketing structure, on the marketing strategy, and then Frederick will do, I don't know, HR policies, and then, I don't know, Prince will work on the logistics and so on. And so they say, all right, guys, everybody's clear who's doing what? Yes. All right, so see you in 2 months when the project is over. Please bring your report section ready so that we can put it all in one document and submit the report. This is a very bad idea for 2 reasons. First, chances are if you have, let's say, 6 people and everybody is responsible for one question and you trust that they will provide the answers to that question by the end of the semester, I guarantee you that there will be at least 1 and possibly more people on your team who will not do their part of the work. They will be telling you throughout the semester that, yes, I'm working on it, I got it. But then 2 days before the deadline, you ask them, so can you send me your work so we can put it in one report? And they'll say, oh, I don't have anything. Or maybe they will send you like 1 page with some nonsense that has nothing to do with the question they had to work on it. And the problem with that is that, you will not have much time to work on it. So you will literally find it out last minute, and you will not have the time to fix the problem, to rectify that problem. So another problem obviously here is that if you assign different people to different questions, you sort of lose this main value of teamwork, which is exchange of ideas and collective sort of collaboration and creativity. If you assign questions to people one by one, the best answers will be the answers that those people can come up with on their own. The better way to do it is everybody collaborates on each question. So it doesn't mean that you all have to write each section together, but you definitely want to get involved in every question as a team, at least initially, generate the ideas, have the discussion, maybe even have an argument about the best answer to that question, and only then maybe ask one of the team members to write up those answers. When you do it that way, the best answer may be the answer that nobody could have come up on their own. So this way you kind of go above the abilities of the smartest member of the team. Because maybe I will say something that will give you an idea that you would have not come up on your own. Maybe you will say something that will give me an idea. So this way, before we know it, we sort of kind of, advance beyond our original ideas and understandings of the question. Not to mention also, if you have those discussions, as I said, first you ensure that everything's done on time. Second, if there is a problem, if somebody is assigned to do most of the work, but you communicate regularly, if there is a problem, you will know about it early enough, so you will be able to do something about that. So I personally recommend that you have discussions about every single question as a team first, and then as a team decide how you want to answer every single question. Then you can either assign people to questions, or you can maybe even say that, I don't know, one person will do most of the research. Another person will work on the graphics, for example. Another person will do some data analysis. And then maybe one person who's a native speaker will actually do all of the writing. So this way it may be a little bit more efficient and the quality of the report may be better. Edison is asking, what do I do if I miss the webinar? No problem. We record the webinars. We will post the recordings. You can watch them later on. As you see, we have only a few people attending the webinars live. But when you look at the count of views of the recordings, in many cases, we have 1,000, 2,000 views. So most people watch the recordings. So that's not a problem. So can you please tell us how we can get a local sponsor to sponsor us for the symposium? Very good question, Ioana. So let's talk about symposium. In fact, that's probably going to be the last question, but I want to talk about it a little bit more. So the next XCulture Symposium is in Canada, in Calgary, and it will be July 15, July 20, if I remember correctly. The invitations went out a long time ago for the students who participated last semester, and they went out for those who are participating this semester yesterday. So normally what we do is we invite people who did extremely well in the project once we have all of the data on their performance, and then only the best students get invited. And so that's how we did with, for example, those who participated in the past. Only those who did very well got the invitations, and then we got about 500 applications, I believe. We have 150 spots, and as of now, most of them have been filled, but we specifically keep a few spots for the semester, for the students who are participating this semester. Now, with you kids, we don't have the complete record of your participation yet, so we don't really know who the best students are. So what we did is we invited all of you to apply. and we gave you until March 24th, I believe, to apply. At that time, we will have some of your performance records, so we will know what your peer evaluations are. We will know if you attended, for example, these webinars, if you participated in the discussions. So we will know quite a lot about your performance, plus those of you who had to do the theory training, we have those results as well. So by that time, we'll have enough data to make a decision whether or not you deserve to be among the 150 students invited to the symposium. In addition, we do ask you to provide reference letters from your teachers or people who know you. And again, we will take those into account, and those who come with strong reference letters obviously will be given a priority. And finally, possibly even most importantly, we do ask you to provide sort of your own statement or explanation of why you think you should be chosen to be in that group. Again, it tells us a lot about you, the way you present yourself, the way you argue. So those are read very carefully and always taken into account. And so you have until the 24th to apply, and then we'll take a few days to go through the applications and select the people who will be invited to attend the symposium. Once that happens, you will have I think we'll give you about 2 weeks to do the registration, so to pay for the registration to the symposium. And then if everything goes fine, April 30th, we will form the teams for the symposium, because you will be attending them also sort of in teams. And then we will start preparing for the event. Now, payment, that's the big component. So first, let me tell you why we charge for the participation and why it costs as much as it does, and then what we can do to help you attend the meeting. So the symposium, the registration is $890, if I remember correctly. And so that includes all your meals while you're there, housing, transportation, all the materials, printed materials and stuff like that, gala dinner, reception, insurance, buses. I may be missing a couple of things here. Memorabilia, you all will get little gifts and stuff like that. Now, many people, and it has happened before, so I would like to clarify that, would say, oh, it's so expensive. I know that you can get a hotel for, let's say, $70 a night, and you can probably eat for $20, $30 a day. So it should be more like $500 per 5-day or 6-day event. The truth is that the housing and food are actually a very small portion of the total expenses that we will have to pay. So the housing and food are probably less than half of all the expenses that we have to make. A much bigger chunk of expenses is, for example, like transportation. So we will be paying about $35,000 for the buses only. So we'll have 2 full days of travel. So we will be going to different companies on day one. Like we will visit 3 companies, and then we will have 1 more day where we will go to the mountains and visit a few companies in the Canadian Rockies just to learn more about hospitality business. And just the buses, so they will cost us, I believe the estimate now is like $36,000 for those 2 days. So it's a huge expense. Second, when it comes to food, again, it's not as simple as, going to a local McDonald's and buying food. So the food will be delivered to us, and some of that will be relatively simple, like breakfast or lunch, but we will have a big reception dinner, we will have a big gala dinner. So those are much, much more expensive propositions when the food is catered to you, served to you. So it's not as simple as just, going to a local store, buying some food. And so obviously the prices there are much higher than if you just, as I said, went to a local restaurant or superstore and bought some fruits. Insurance, again, we have to buy both in case something goes wrong with one of the students, but also if one of the students, let's say, gets drunk and breaks something. So most of the attendees will be in their 20s and 30s, and young people from all around the world, something can go wrong. So we'll spend several $1,000s on insurance, and so things like that. So once you add all of that, obviously, that's a substantial amount. Second, what many people don't realize, that organizing an event like this takes a lot of work. And so nobody on our team is paid to participate in XCulture, but we do have to cover the expenses for some of the professors and for 20 ambassadors who will be basically organizing the event. So we have about a dozen professors who are working for free, essentially, for half a year preparing the event. In fact, some of them, like Professor Baumanis, will spend literally thousands of hours, probably at least 1,000 hours by the time we are done with the event. And then there are some professors who will be running all kinds of activities and seminars and webinars. Obviously, for those professors, we have to pay at least for their tickets, right? So I cannot expect them to work for free for so long, and then on top of that, to pay for themselves to travel to Canada and for housing. So obviously we have to put some money aside to not pay them, but to cover their travel expenses and time in Canada. Likewise, with a group of 150 students, and we'll have about 50 professors attending the event, there will be a lot of logistics. Somebody, once people show up, somebody has to sort of receive them, check all the paperwork and stuff like that. Somebody has to walk them to the room where they will live. When we board buses, somebody has to, guide the people. Somebody has to order print of the conference programs and, T-shirts and whatever else we'll be ordering. So for that, we hired 20 people whom we call ambassadors. So all of them are former X-Culture participants, and pretty much all of them have also participated in the X-Culture coaching program. Again, they will not be paid, so they don't get any money from us. But again, we believe that we should cover their, at least, time in Canada. So we will not be paying for their tickets. They still have to buy them the tickets, but they will be in Canada for 2 weeks, and we have to pay for them during that time. So they will be arriving 1 week earlier to get everything ready and prepared. And then they will be there for 1 week in preparation and 1 week during the event. And again, they will cost us probably about $1,500 to $2,000 each for the time that they will be there. And again, obviously it would make no sense to expect them to work for free for 2 weeks and on top of that to pay for their stay there. So at the very least, we want to compensate for their, basically once they arrive in Canada, we don't want them to pay for anything. And so once you add all of those expenses, it becomes fairly expensive. And unfortunately, we do not have a separate, like a governmental grant or some sort of a company that pays for that. So the way we do it is we basically add up all of the expenses and then just divide them by 150 or whatever the number of participants. And so that's basically how the prices are, calculated. And so that comes up roughly to the registration cost. In reality, it's slightly less than registration cost. We add about $100 on top of that. And the reason for that is it's for emergencies. Like, for example, when we had the symposium in Miami, we had some problems with transportation, and unexpectedly we had to pay a few extra $1,000 for transportation. It was like extra $10,000. And so the way we budgeted at that time, the registration, if I remember correctly, it was like $600 or $700 at that time, like exactly how much we needed. And so if we didn't have, at that time, one of the companies, DHL, gave us a check, literally like wrote us a check to cover the expense. If that didn't happen, we would have ended up literally paying out of our own pocket. So like myself or Professor Baumanis would have had, to come up with like $10,000 to cover that unexpected expense. So what we do now is we actually add a little bit extra on top of the registration fee, just so we have a little cushion, a little extra expense, so that, if something goes wrong, then we can, cover those expenses from that reserve fund. And then if everything goes fine and we end up with like $10,000 in the account, obviously we can use the money to start preparing for the next event for the next year, maybe hire some student to help us with preparation. So that's how it's calculated. Now, how we can help you with the money. So we don't have travel stipends per se. So meaning that we will not give money to anyone to go to the event just because we don't have that money. It means that if we have to give money to someone, it means that everybody else would have to pay a little bit more so that we can sponsor one student, which we don't want to do. But what we will do is this. One, you can ask for a support letter that you can present to a potential sponsor. So we will write a very strong letter explaining where you're going, that it's a big honor and not everyone who applied was selected, and then what you will learn and what you will gain and what you will sort of experience on this trip. And most students in the past, would take those letters to, if they study at the university, they would take it to the dean of the business school, for example, maybe to the managers of the companies where they work, maybe to the companies where their parents work. We had people who literally went to the mayor of the city, and we had people who went to the local companies. And in the end, almost everybody actually gets money. In fact, I believe like literally out of 150 students who attend the event, like 145 do get some money. So most students get something from the university. We had once, I remember, 7 students from Italy, from a city. It was, I forgot the name, in the north, like a smaller town. And what they did, they literally went to the mayor of the city and said, we were invited to the symposium. Can you help us? And so the mayor said, sure, it's a big honor for our town. So they actually got a full sponsorship, and they went, like basically got full stipends from the mayor. So those letters that we write in support of the students, request for sponsorship actually do work. And so again, you would have to do some, asking around yourself, but with the support and documentation we provide, actually that might help. Likewise, if you want us to send those letters directly to the sponsors, we can do that as well. So if you give us the addresses and names, we will help you and support you in that way. So again, we don't really have the budget. I mean, we're a nonprofit organization, so we don't really have the budget to give you the money, but we will definitely be able to help you, talk to potential sponsors and get funding that way. So that's it. Now, the only other thing that I want to say very importantly, so with the kids younger than 17, we require that you come with parents. So we obviously we don't have the resources and we don't think it's safe for you to travel alone if you're younger than basically legal age. So you would need to come with parents. And so we understand that 2 people, even though you will cost us twice as much because it's 2 people who need to be provided with housing and transportation and insurance and all of that stuff, we feel that multiplying that by 2 would be just too expensive. And so at this time we have decided that the price for parent plus child, if any of those children are invited and are coming with the parents, it will be $1,450. So you basically get like a $500 discount or so. So that way it, almost below our actual cost, but we thought it would be way too expensive to expect you to pay double the price. So if it's a parent plus kid, even though it will cost us twice as much, but we sort of, kind of discount that price a little bit just to make sure that you can attend. And I will be sending a letter to all the parents and teachers probably today, just giving a little bit more information about the travel arrangements and registration if it's a kind of family as opposed to just one student who travels on his or her own. So that's them. Yeah. And yes, so kids will be at the symposium. Shia, I see he is asking a question. In Italy, that was the first time when we tried and invited 6 kids. So we had one team of kids who were attending the event. And actually it went very, very well. So in fact, the kids it seemed like at times that they enjoyed it even more than the students. Like they went on the company visits, and so they had, asked very good questions and, all the sightseeing. They did wonderful presentations. In fact, I'll probably share with you the presentations they did. It was really, really good. So those were some of the best kids we had, obviously, but it seems like they fit right in. So they participated in all the sessions. They wrote the resume. They did the job talk interview. They participated in the elevator pitch competition. They visited the companies. Obviously went to the opera with us. So we had opera was one of the partner companies. And so this time, yes, we are planning to invite more kids. Again, it's still primarily designed for university students. Out of 150 participants, almost all will be older MBA and business students. But we want to have probably about 3 teams of kids. So it means that we will have about 15 to 20 younger participants. And so, yes, so if you would like to attend, you can. As I said, the only problem is that younger ones will have to come with parents, just because, as I said, I don't think it would be safe for you to travel so far alone. And then once on this side, we simply will not have the resources to, take care of the kids. So they will require a little bit more attention. So we want the parents to attend as well. Yeah, so that's basically where we stand. And the purpose of the meeting is learning international business by traveling to a foreign country. So the program will include things like, obviously, as I said, we will have a lot of kind of cultural exchange activities. So we'll have all kinds of events where you just meet people from all around the world. That 150 people, normally we have about 40 countries represented. 45, I think we had in Italy, and 42, I believe we had in Miami, in Macerata, in Miami before that. So, so there will be a lot of activities where you just simply hang out with people from other countries. But on the business side, we will have a series of webinars and seminars and workshops where the attendees will be taught international business, as well as will be sort of kind of trained in how to build a successful career. Just to give you some examples, we will be meeting with, for example, local entrepreneurs. We will visit 3 different companies. At least at this time, we have 3 confirmed company visits. We will meet probably with the city mayor. In Italy, we actually had 2 meetings with the city mayor. We will have workshops on how to write a resume, how to apply to college or graduate schools, how to do a job interview, how to do an elevator pitch. And if you don't know what it is, it's a very important thing in business. We'll teach that. So we'll have, as I said, a lot of, like little lectures on different aspects of international business. So there will be pretty much every day will be filled like from 8 a.m. till literally late at night with workshops and meetings and networking events and company visits and travel and stuff like that. In Miami, we had complaints that we put so much business in the program that the students didn't have the time to see the ocean, even though you could hear it. We were like 10 minutes away from the shore. They never had the time for that fun. And so in Italy, we gave also a little bit time for the students to explore the country. So we had a couple of evenings that they could spend on their own. So they could go sightseeing. I think the students organized like an international soccer tournament, football tournament. I think one evening they invited some salsa trainer, and so they were dancing, learning how to dance, how to salsa. So in Canada, they'll probably have something like that as well. Plus in Canada, it coincides with Calgary Stampede, which is a big outdoor festival. So it's like one of the biggest outdoor festivals in the world. And so it's all about cowboys and all about, this kind of cowboy culture. So you'll have an opportunity to experience that as well. So yes, to sum it up, if you would like to attend, you should have received your invitations yesterday. Find that email and just apply. And then it will be a few more weeks before we make the selections. But by the end of the month, you will know if you're invited or not. If you are invited, you will then have to proceed with the registration. And you will be invited also to give us the names of the potential sponsors. We'll send you the letters in support of your trip. And so the hope is that you will be able then to raise the necessary funds to attend. As I said, in the past, we had, in a few cases, a little bit extra funds to offer students who needed them most, like from developing countries who have to travel very, very far. But again, I don't want to make any promises this time, so we'll see how it goes. So at this time, the plan is not to offer stipends, but we'll see how things go. And then we'll see you in Canada, and I guess have fun together there. All right, well, thank you so much. We went way over time, but hopefully it was useful. So somebody says, I'm 17-year-old, 17 should be fine. Again, we might want to, maybe have a phone call with you just to make sure that you're, mature enough and stuff. But 17 should be fine. I believe in most countries, the legal age is 16. So you're allowed to vote once you, turn 16, travel on your own. So no, it should be fine. So, but if you are 12 or 13 or 10, obviously, we wouldn't be able to take responsibility of you, and we would strongly prefer that you travel with your parents. Usually the rule is if you have your own passport and if you are allowed to travel on your own, we are fine with that. If you don't, if you cannot travel on your own, obviously, in that case, you would need to go with parents. So that's kind of the quick rule. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Olga, again, for participating, for giving a wonderful presentation, sharing your stories. And
great pleasure.
Yeah, so see you all next weekend, and then hopefully in Canada in a few months. All right.